I've seen this on the Reddit a few times and I just never got to it. So I'm actually kind of excited about this idea of why Facebook doesn't use Git. I work on building Graphite, which is fundamentally inspired by internal Facebook tooling. And when I set out to create a startup with friends, I had never heard of Mercurial. Despite being really, I mean, I've actually never used Mercurial. Who's here used Mercurial? Yeah, I didn't think Mercurial was a SVN. That's how little I know about it, is that I don't know what it is. I just know it wasn't Tortoise. I used SVN and I used Tortoise SVN, okay? So when Mercurial came out, I had like literally no idea. You seem to be right. Yeah, I thought Mercurial had some rules around lock files. Is that true? Because Perforce also had this idea of lock files and all that. I used Tortoise, yeah. Who didn't use Tortoise? Okay, I went hard on Tortoise. Okay, I went hard on Tortoise. Despite being passionate about all things dev tools, my previous engineering experience has included personal projects, college homework, iOS development at Google, and infra development at Airbnb. Throughout my life, Git, by the way, Airbnb, does everybody universally hate the Airbnb JavaScript recommendations? Is that like a thing that is that a requirement of being a JavaScript front-end developer, is to hate Airbnb like style guides and requirements? I've never heard somebody say they're great. Throughout my life, Git was common as water. It was so common, in fact, that I assumed it was the only viable tool for creating and managing code changes. So yes, I was lucky enough to start coding with a SVN or with a source management, I think in like 2008. It's only about 3 years after Git was created. And so at that point, Git was it was not popular at all. And so actually at that point, SVN was like at the height of its popularness. And so it was like, I either chose between Mercurial, or SVN, and I chose SVN. And I think that's because DreamHost had a public SVN option, and I was hosting on DreamHost back then. Funny enough, Mercurial expert Gregory Sork sat a few seats away from me at Airbnb, though I only knew him as a kind of deskmate and knew nothing of his contributions. In 2021, my teammates Thomas and Nick opened my mind. They came from Facebook and, to my surprise, hardly knew Git. Instead, they were deeply trained on Mercurial patterns and Facebook's stack diffs workflow. Over time, they sold me on the benefits of non-Git tooling and patterns, and we ended up making an early company pivoted to bring stack diffs to GitHub developers. In the process, we made a CLI that incorporates the idea from HG into Git. Okay, so I didn't realize that HG Mercurial, is that true? I know DreamHost, yeah. Holy F DreamHost, yeah, for those that may remember DreamHost, I was a DreamHoster. So hold on, does that mean that stack diffs and these things are actually a Mercurial concept and they're not? I think I explained further down. Okay. To me, that's kind of crazy because I always thought Mercurial was like a bad version of source control. I had no idea that Facebook used it as apparently their primary type. I mean, when I joined Netflix, Perforce was the primary type for quite a bit of time. This post is not about our startup. Rather, it's about the root question that has nagged me for over the last 3 years. Why do Facebookers, metamates... What? Please tell me that's not true. They're called metamates? Please tell me that's not true. Sus, dude, metamates is just the worst name ever. Why adopt Mercurial instead and build custom workflows on top of it? I know Google doesn't use Git, but that makes sense. Google's engineering predates Git by over 5 years. Yes, but I mean, you can always upgrade. That's not hard to do. Facebook, on the other hand, was founded at the same time that Git was created in 2004. By the time Facebook was seriously evaluating source control tooling, Git was more popular than Mercurial. So why does Facebook not use Git? This question is niche, but I think it's a fun one to consider. I guess, you know what's strange? I am so ingrained in using Git at this point, I would have just simply never thought to ask any other question. So this idea of not using Git just seems kind of, let's answer this question. If Facebook had leaned into Git and contributed back in the early 2010s, the engineering world might have looked different. Git might be more user-friendly and might natively support stacked changes. I would never call Git not user-friendly. For me, Git has always been really, really user-friendly. And I guess that's probably because I come from an SVN world where I know when people say Git is hard, I've never understood that. I've never understood this kind of commenting. Git is so confusing. How is Git confusing? Like, what about Git is confusing? I guess that's the thing that I've never understand is, like, what is confusing about Git? Git is confusing how? Can someone, like, is it possible for you to try to type in a reason why it's confusing in a few words? Like, can someone just hit me with like a few words reason? Check out Prime's Git course. I do technically have a Git course, by the way. I mean, hey, okay, now this is an actual ad. Boot.dev/Prime for my Git course. And by the way, Git course number 2 is coming out next week. And that will be all about merge conflicts, work trees, working as a team, that kind of stuff. But I'm just curious. Git can eat dick. I'm on FTP. Okay, crazy. Literally ignored my concise explanation. I didn't literally ignore it. Did you not see chat going by 100,000 miles an hour? I think there's a fundamental principles that people don't learn, so it's confusing to them. That seems like a stupid reason. I want to see a real reason. Someone give me a real reason. Submodules and subtrees are confusing. Sparse checkouts and shallow clones are a bit tricky. Git rebase master. I do that all the time. Rebasing is great. It's easy to get yourself into a bad state, and it's hard to dig yourself out. Really? So, okay, so my general rule of thumb is that I think rebasing, multi-branch conflicts, issues with PRs on those branches, I think all of that is because you've never actually learned it. Like, what, I'm gonna be really real here for a second. I think that most of you have just never taken the 2 hours of time it takes to learn Git well enough to not be confused by any of it. I've only been in a state where it's actually confusing very few times, and I think it's because I've ran into a bug with Git. And I've ran into a problem with Git every now and then, which is much different. This actually just happened to me just a little bit ago, where I had a file that said it was changed, and when I would add it, the file would disappear. It was gone. But then my file was incorrect, and so then I'd reset hard, and then my file would then show changes again. And it would be like in this really weird state where there's somehow a cache problem or something has gone on where there's some sort of inconsistent state that just a little bit. And so that was like the file wasn't binary. And that only happens in very rare circumstances. I've actually had something where it's like, yeah, it's some sort of line ending. Yeah, something like that that's just super confusing. Mine wasn't a line ending. It was a single character change. But it was really confusing what was happening. Whatever. Right, like besides for that happen, which has happened probably 4 times over the last 10 years of me using Git, the rest of it is like, if you don't know rebase is super easy, okay? Here, I'm just going to give you guys a quick rebase. You have 2 different branches, okay? And here's the histories. This is master, this is feature. All rebase does is simply allows you to move where you were pointing at to somewhere else. That's it. If you think of rebase in any other way, you're just making it entirely too complicated. It allows you to take your commits and perform an action over those commits. You don't use rebase over merge. You rebase and then merge. I think you guys are all using rebase incorrectly. This is actually shocking. How many of you? Okay, how about this one? How about August? How about August 14th, approximately. I will go over my Git course on boot.dev. I will do the entire thing, both courses, first one and second one, and I'll answer every last person's question. And then on boot.dev, we will release a 6-hour video of me going over everybody's question, and we'll just simply do Git. Because I cannot believe how confused, like, that's crazy how confusing you guys are. Like, Git's not hard. This is shocking to me personally, okay? This is shocking to me personally that this is so hard. Git's hard? No, Git is easy. All right. GitHub might make developed better support for closed source software development. Early Facebooker companies like Uber and Pinterest might have also used Git and GitHub as their source control rather than Fabricator and Mercurial, leading to less fragmented ecosystem over the last decade. But Facebook didn't stick with Git for their primary monorepos. Instead, they adopted Mercurial for their version control and incrementally added custom tooling on top. Why? First, I tried Googling the answer and found the following definitive blog post. Scaling Mercurial at Facebook. All right. The 10-year-old write-up, along with some later YouTube Tech Talks, gave me a starting answer. Because performance. I mean, even to me, that sounds confusing. Even this feels confusing for me. What is Git doing that there's a problem with performance? I don't really even understand that, because I guess this might have been before the days of large file stores, right? Large file stores. Microsoft owns. No, Microsoft started owning GitHub in like when? 2018, 2020? Git does not scale well for large repos. Yeah, I guess if you have a big enough repo, Git starts to suck. That's fair. And pre-large file store, that's also fair. They must be committing large binaries. And well, that's what, I mean, to be completely fair, there was 400 megabytes worth of JSON in a TVUI directory that we had to download every single CI run. So, I mean, things happen. I'm just saying sometimes you download 400 megabytes. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Sometimes you download 400 megabytes. Okay, it's JSON. JSON is not binary. You're right. It's really, really fat and big binary. But I wanted to go deeper and hear from the original deciding engineers. With the help of a lot of teammates, I posted the question on an ex-Facebookers group asking about the history. I also cold emailed 2 of the original engineers working on the project to migrate into Mercurial. They were kind enough to call me off the record and give personal accounts of the project. Here's what I was able to learn from the full reason behind not using Git at Facebook. Hopefully this post can help further document the history behind why our tools in 2024 are the way they are. This is going to be super interesting. I'm actually super excited about this. Note, I've never worked at Facebook. This is and this account is my best understanding of the facts as someone who wasn't there myself. I was able to speak to a few people who worked on the project and received their permission to write about what they explained to me. This is crazy. Note, Greg spends full workdays writing weekly deep dives on engineering practices and dev tools. This is made possible because these articles help get the word out about graphite. If you like this post, try graphite today. I can't say it's a hashtag ad. I'm just saying I'm getting bamboozled here somehow. I know. How do we call this? Is this an ad or not an ad? Now I don't even know. Now it feels like an ad. Hashtag ad. Shit. Why? Let's see. Why and how Facebook migrated off Git. According to the 2014 Facebook blog post, Facebook started out on Git, as one would expect. It was their default choice at the time for a source control system. But around 2012, they started hitting scaling limits. I know. Okay, guys, shut up. Flip, take this out. Flip, take this out. Flip, be my scrum mommy and take this out right now. But around 2012, they started hitting scaling limits. The post claims their code base was many times larger than even the Linux kernel, which checked in at 17 million lines of code and 400 or 44,000 files. I mean, that doesn't sound like terribly large. Is anyone else here thinking this is crazy? Because I don't think this is like, I think the things that I worked on at Netflix, we had multiple repos with tens of thousands, 20,000, 25,000 files, JavaScript files, by the way. It just seems kind of wild. Specifically, Git operations started feeling slow for engineers. Not crippling slow, but slow enough to warrant an investigation. Yeah, like clone will always feel slow. I mean, the reality is that I guarantee you, whatever slowness they felt, NPM shitting the bed and requiring you to delete your node modules and reinstall them, even installing from cache, had to feel longer, right? The key bottleneck was the process of statting all the files. Git examines every file and naturally becomes slower and slower as the number of files increase. This had to change, right? This was 2014 because I assume Git doesn't do all this statusing all the time. I'm curious about all this if that's true. And even is statting 44,000 files going to be that slow? It has. I know it's changed a lot, but it's still interesting. The engineers tried running a simulation, creating a dummy repos that matched the expected scale of Facebook's code base in a few years. The result was horrifying. Basic Git commands took over 45 minutes to complete. I guarantee you, Facebook, the so-called stat files look something like this. They did their initial Facebook growth of files, and then they're like, well, we're here now. We were here earlier. This is 35x. X being, of course, 1 month. So we're effectively going to grow like that forever. And look at this. At this point, we're going to have 14 million files. And if you grow to 14 million files, it actually isn't even possible. That's crazy. In the words of the original engineer of the project, it's not the kind of thing you want to leave until all your engineers are complaining. This is also fair and factual. By that point, the thing would be too unwieldy. Trying to do damage control, never mind come up with a cleaner solution, would be a Herculean effort. So a ragtag group of Swedes got to work investigating solutions. First, they contacted the Git maintainers to see what it would take to extend Git to support large monorepos better. Here are some of the choice quotes from the email with the Git maintainers. It's 12 years later, and yet I feel somewhat frustrated reading those messages. Sounds like you have everything in a single Git. Split up the massive repository to separate smaller Git repos. I mean, we just did. When I was at Netflix, we had all the JavaScript into one team. And then we actually just started splitting the teams. It also makes releasing a little bit easier when you have like different sub things that can just release and move at their own rate. and then the main product doesn't have to adopt it until they're ready to, and it just makes release trains and all that a little bit easier. I don't know. Personal opinion. While you can do this, it's not a good idea. You should split up repositories. I concur. I feel, let's see, I'm working in the, okay, what does sick mean again? I forget what that means. Oh, dang it. Sick. Oh yeah, that's right. It's to fix, it's not just for pointing out errors. It usually means to point out errors and stuff, right? Typically, people use it to point out errors. That's right. That's what it was. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood what it was. I'm working in the company with many years of development history with huge CSV repos, and we are slowly but surely migrating our code base from CSV to Git. Split the things up. This will allow you to reorganize things better, and there is, in my humble opinion, no downsides. While Git could be better with large repositories, in particular applying commits in interactive rebase seems to slow down on bigger repositories. There's only so much you can do about statting 1.3 million files. So they did. I actually literally guessed this correctly. I unironically guessed what they did correctly. They were currently at 44,000 files, and they made some sort of linear assumption, going, we're going to be at 1.3 million files in a couple years. How would you even create that? Okay, if you created one file every 45 seconds, every single day, 24 hours a day, nonstop, you would get to 1.3 million after a year and a half. Genius projections. I know this seems a little fake. The response wasn't cooperative. I don't know. Is this response not cooperative? Or is it just like, yo, we don't know what to do. You said, how can I make this thing faster on 1.3 million files? And we're just like, you can't. I mean, the fact that they responded and just said, hey, this would be my approach. I don't know what to do here. Anyways, the response wasn't cooperative, nor has it aged well in the future full of large monorepos. The Git maintainers pushed back on improving performance and instead recommended that Facebook shard their monorepo. However, sharding was a non-starter for Facebook team, and they recounted being surprised by Git's unwillingness to be extended. Traditionally, being offered free open source labor by a major tech company is a well-received gift that can ensure a lifelong for projects, or a long life for projects. I actually usually find this to be the opposite. When some big company wants to work on your open source thing, typically there's a lot of pushbacks because usually what they're working for is sometimes not where they want to go. There's all sorts of different problems, and then once the company has what it wants, it leaves you, and then you have a lot more code and a lot more things you have to maintain as an open source project. They tend to get in, do what they need to do, and get the hell out. I don't often find this to be a completely true statement. They want to add features they need. I know. To me, this doesn't feel. That doesn't necessarily feel good. The big company is going to worry about licensing, expect more polls, etc. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to be said whenever that happens. Anyways, that being said, the Git project was under no obligation to bend to Facebook's asks. I don't intend to paint them as the bad guys of the story. Doing something because Facebook asked you to is no way to live one's life. Interestingly, the Git maintainers appeared to change their tone 2 years later after seeing Facebook contribute back meaningful improvements to Mercurial. They mailed the list about performance issues in Git. From what I saw, it was relatively little feedback. I had the impression, and I would not be surprised if they had the impression that the Git development community is relatively unconcerned about performance issues on larger repositories. So the question is, if the Git community is interested in being competitive in such large-scale scenarios, something what Mercurial seems to be now out of the box. Oh. A decade later, Git has made significant improvements to support monorepos. FYI, or for what it's worth, the situation has changed pretty drastically today. Git now, with some knowledge of how to do it, operates well with really, really large repos now. I may have added an extra now. Okay. Well, that's nice, so we don't have to worry about this. Alternatives considered. Alternatives to Git in 2012 were scarce. You know, it's kind of funny. I'm surprised. Then why didn't Mercurial catch on? If Facebook was so adamant in using something different, and they contributed a whole bunch to the point where things changed, why wasn't Mercurial more popular? What makes Git so popular that Mercurial isn't? Is it just simply GitHub? Is it the hub that really made it? It turns out nobody actually needs monorepos. Okay, yeah, I fully agree with that statement. But someone said, Git, let's see, what's it called? Git was used for Linux. Yes, Git was used for Linux. It was created by Linus in 5 days after somebody broke the BitKeeper, the BitKeeper license by reverse engineering its protocol, which was a requirement that, BitKeeper, it was a requirement that they did not reverse engineer the protocol, and somebody in the Linux, reverse engineered it. They broke the license, and then BitKeeper was like, ain't no way, and so Linus said F it and wrote Git in 5 days. Also, just to be fair, just because Linux uses something does not mean we're going to use something. Remember, Linux still largely operates via email. Does anybody here discuss their issues via email? Anyone does mailing lists? Yo, fuck that shit. Exactly. I mean, it's not fun. I don't want to do that, right? Every day. I'm not a big fan. I know you're on mailing lists, but actually doing all of your development via mailing lists does seem kind of crazy. But I actually also see kind of some of the benefits of using a mailing list. Emails are good for logging. Exactly. I was about to say, for logging purposes, that does actually sound kind of nice. Having a little bit better searchable results. I don't find that all the results are that great for searchability. Good email lists are very clear, unlike huge chat discussions. Yeah, chat discussions can be very confusing as well. When I don't understand something, I create it myself. I created my own Git tools in a few years back and learned so much. Yes, this is a great way to learn, by the way. This is why we're going to be doing HTTP from scratch here soon. HTTP from scratch, I want to start in September if possible. Let's see. The team considered the closed source Perforce, Google's former source control solution. In an early investigation call with Perforce sales engineers, Facebook pointed out architectural flaw in Perforce local consistency between reader and writer nodes. The response didn't instill confidence. The sales engineers weren't aware of the fundamental issues and had no roadmap plans to address it. Damn, get wrecked. Further solutions like BitKeeper were considered, but all were quickly disqualified. The last option was Mercurial. It had performance similar to Git, but had cleaner architecture. Where Git was complex web of Bash and C code, Mercurial was engineered in Python using object-oriented code patterns and was designed to be extensible. Object-oriented did Uncle... I just heard Uncle Bob. I just heard him. Yeah, that's right. I think I just heard Alan Kay and Uncle Bob start clapping somewhere deep in the distance. By the way, can we all just agree to one thing? Can we just agree to one simple thing? Object-oriented code in Python is the actual devil. Can we all agree to that? Can we all agree to object-oriented programming in Python, specifically in Python, is terrible? Can we all agree to that? No, come on, just give us one thing. Object-oriented Python equals performance. Dude, object-oriented Python is insane for performance. Holy cow. I changed from object-oriented Python because I thought it was going to be faster than using dicks for everything. Instead, I did a couple dicks. Dude, just loaded up my program with a bunch of dicks, and it was literally 100x faster. And I was shocked because I was like, ain't no way. If I make a class, obviously it's faster, right? Obviously it's faster. Yes, the dicks. Dude, and I have no idea. It was not faster. It was, in fact, horrible. Dicks out for Harambe, dicks out for Python. A class is a dick. Then why is it so bad? Dude, it was crazy. One of the investigating engineers, by the way, this argument is fairly baseless in the sense that I somehow doubt that just simply because something was object-oriented coding patterns made it much easier to understand. I mean, at the end of the day, you still have to understand everything from the ground up to really make good changes to a source control. And so to me, it's like, I think you'd end up spending the same amount of time either way. I think that Python is just easier to understand. I think what I see here, honestly, is the following. I see Bash plus C versus Python. And someone's like, man, this is easier. Which I agree. Typically, Python is easier to get going in than a C and Bash program, okay? I'm just saying it is easier almost always. Almost always. Almost. Okay, you can always make Python hard. Python can get really hard. Spitting fire right now. I know. I'm spitting fire. These are some hot takes. Python can actually be harder than C if you really try hard. But if you want a bunch of PHP devs to extend your version control and options that are Bash plus C or Python. I know, exactly. Bash, which one should I choose? One of the investigating engineers had a strong former experience with Mercurial, and the team decided to attend Mercurial Hackathon in Amsterdam to investigate further. Oh, that's actually such a cool way to do this. This is actually absolutely amazing way to do that. Go to a place in which a bunch of people that have a bunch of experience on the thing you want to change are all going to be in the same area so you can talk to them. What a good idea. And because I had a lot of prior association with Mercurial, I bent over backwards to pursue every possible alternative before putting Mercurial on the table. Brian O'Sullivan, ex-Facebook engineer. What they found was a system that was easy to extend in a community of maintainers who were impressively welcoming to aggressive changes by the Facebook team. I think this was the specific hackathon mentioned, but I'm not positive. Some real early 2010s video vibes. I'm not going to watch it. I don't want to die of cringe. Migrating the whole engineering org. Okay, so this is going to be kind of crazy. Prior association. After the Amsterdam hackathon, the Facebook team was convinced. All that remained was convincing the rest of the company of the migration. This was the immediate or intimidating task. Engineers can be extremely sensitive about tooling changes. Imagine Vim versus Emacs. And changing source control systems is a big deal. I feel like Emacs versus Vim is a much different argument than using Mercurial versus Git. Like, I don't think I would really care that much. When I had to use Perforce, I was like, I'm using Perforce now. And every now and then shit happened. I didn't understand why, so I had to go check the docs. I don't know, it just doesn't feel... This doesn't feel like such a big deal, comparatively. Like, if you told me I had to quit using Vim and had to start using Emacs, like, that feels like a big change. It's just politics. Yeah. The team set out smoothly, as smoothly as possible so not to trigger defensive responses from the other engineers. What ensued sounds like a masterclass in internal dev tools migrations. The team spends months socializing the possibilities of migrating to Mercurial and took time to map all common commands and workflows between Git and Mercurial. They went so far as to source the frequency of Git commands run across the company and specifically document how the most frequent operations would work in Mercurial instead. Secondly, they created opportunities for developers to voice their concerns and discuss any edge cases that might be tricky in the new systems. Going in, the team assumed they'd get bogged down in flame wars over obtuse 8-way octopus merge hypotheticals. But to their surprise, they found their peer engineers to be accommodating and friendly. Yeah, you know why? Does anybody remember the discussion we just had about Rebase? Nobody even knows Git, apparently, so there's no 8-way octopus merge that you're going to have to even worry about, okay? No one's going to come in with those kind of things because nobody actually even knows the tool itself, so guess what? It's not even a big deal. Let's see, finally, they committed to the migration and cut the company over to Mercurial. The rest is history. Facebook contributed performance improvements to Mercurial, making it the best option for large mono repos. Evan Priestley extended Fabricator to support Mercurial. Facebook leveraged Mercurial's concept of diffs to create pattern of stacking, unlocking novel code review parallelization. By the way, this is actually, this is what makes Graphite so good is this right here. Stacking is honestly by far the most excellent thing ever when it comes to working with people. If you have to work with more than one person and you have to do code reviews, this idea that Facebook apparently created is by far the best way, because that way you can keep working and make changes to your previous one without just being completely bogged down like wild. Ex-Facebookers left to new companies and brought their workflow with them, creating a small but vocal cult of stack diff enthusiasts. Finally, I met some of those enthusiasts and decided to dedicate my 20s to bringing Mercurial-style stack diffs to Git and GitHub. Closing thoughts. What is the takeaway from this story? Reflecting on our quotes and interviews, I'm reminded of the classic wisdom that so many of history's key technical decisions are human-driven, not technology-driven. Yeah, just like Git being created. Git was created because a human decided to break TOS. It's that simple, right? That's all you have to do. Someone was like, hey, man, don't touch the red button. And someone's like, that red button? They're like, don't touch it. I can't help it! And then touched it. And boom, Git was created. For all those reading this, I think this was Brian's true brilliance in getting Mercurial adopted at Facebook, and something people should consider when bringing new technologies to a company. Ex-Facebooker. Kindness and openness go far in the world of dev tools, and I aim to carry these values as I contribute to the history of source control. I think that's fair. If you could really nail what the problem is and how you actually choose to actually fix the problem, not just make a new perspective on the problem, I think you do actually have a real good argument as to why your product is better. And I think devs generally will listen to you. I think that's what it was, because I really disliked a lot of my experiences with SVN. I found working with a larger team kind of a big pain in the ass, and there's all these problems with it. Damn, yeah, I am on a bouncy ball. And so I found all those things like real. And so when I used Git, it was a great alternative. I actually enjoyed the difference between Git and SVN. At first, I didn't understand it at all, because all I knew was just a very small slice of what Git did versus SVN. And then once I used it a little bit longer, then I was like, oh yeah, this is really great. And by the way, I don't even know how to do a 10-way tentacle hentai merge hypothetical. Like, I actually don't even know how to do this. I would say that I'm pretty good with Git, and I don't even know how to do crazy. I didn't even know you can do crazy merges. Okay, I know nothing about these merges. I don't use those merges. Anyways, the name is, give me that 10-way hentai tentacle merge, baby. Flip, keep it in. Flip, keep it in.